Flying feet, free, joys to sing, and fountain in His day. And there may I go, while as He washed all my sins away. Redeeming love has been my theme, and shall be till I die. And then I hope to sing His love in sweeter strains on high.
I've had something on my mind here lately, and I'd ask that y'all would keep me in your thoughts and please pray for me because I need your prayers. I keep saying I'm going to stop coming up here one of these days. So far it hadn't happened. You know, this past week, I don't think I turned it on, did I? Can you hear me? Maybe that'll help a little bit. This past week, I was thinking about all of God's people and how that the biggest majority of them are unable to get any rest while they're here in this life. And so I got thinking, and I thought, well, I'll read a little bit about rest. And I come upon several things in the Bible that has to do with rest. And one of the first things that I want to read is in the book of Genesis. And in the 2nd chapter, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day God ended His work which He had made, and He rested on the 7th day from all of His work which He had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it He had rested from all His work which God created and made. You know, the 7th day, the number 7 has significance in the Bible, and that significance of it is that it's a number of completeness. So here it says that God rested on the 7th day. That means He had done everything that He was going to do here on this earth and in creating this earth and this universe, and that He had rested from it. But you know, there's a type of rest that we can get in the Lord, that we can have a little bit of escape from the things that are going on in this life, and it's only His people that can do that. And it's only His people that have found the truth and worship Him in spirit and in truth that can fully realize what rest is. Now over in Exodus, you know, God was talking with Moses, and Moses was wanting to know that he would show him the way of God. And in the 33rd chapter of Exodus, in the 13th verse, Moses says, "Now therefore I pray thee, if I have found grace in thy sight, show me now thy way, that I might know thee, that I might find grace in thy sight, and consider that this nation is thy people." And he said, and this God said, "My presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest." Now, Moses was only wanting to know that if he had found grace in his sight. And God's answer to him was that, yes, you have, and my presence is going to be with you, and I will let you rest in my rest. Now, God has rested since he created this earth. There's nothing else that he needs to do. He is able to give us that rest, and that we are able to get away from the toils and the tribulations of this life. And he further said into it, and he said, if thy presence go not with me, carry us not up hence. He didn't want to go if God wasn't going to go with him. For wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Is it not in that thou goest with us? So shall we be separated, and I and thy people from all the people that are upon the face of the earth. Here we have the first separation of God's people. They were separated because they were in the presence of God, and he was giving them his rest. And the Lord said unto Moses, I will do this thing also that thou hast spoken, for thou hast found grace in my sight, and I know thee by name. He knows every one of us by name. He had already made a covenant in eternity before he ever made the foundation of this world, and he knew every one of us by name at that point. You know, David wanted to find some rest too. And over in Psalms, I think it's the 55th chapter, I think. Yeah, it's in the 55th chapter. Starting in the 4th verse, David writes, my heart is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. He wasn't having a real good day. Everything was looking bad. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. The world was overwhelming with everything that was going on. And I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. Lo, then would I wander off and remain in the wilderness. He would go and separate himself into the wilderness and remain in God's rest and the presence of God. You know, that's something that each one of us, I know that we, at times, it seems that this world and this life kind of overwhelms us. And oftentimes, we let it get to us. But we don't have to. If we do what God asks us to do and seek his face, then he would, his presence, bless us with his presence, and we will be able to participate in his rest. And take away and wipe away all those things that happen unto us. You know, over again in Psalms, in I think 116, I wrote that one at the bottom of my book. David's still talking in Psalms 116, beginning in the 5th verse. Gracious is the Lord and righteousness, yea, our God is merciful. The Lord preserveth the simple. I was brought low, and he helped me. Return unto thy rest, O my soul. So here David he had seemed to have slipped out of that rest, and now he was asking to return unto it, so that he could actually get a little pleasure. For the Lord hath dealt bountifully with thee. You know, when the Lord deals with us in a good way, we seem to be in that rest. And when we've turned around and we've done things that we probably shouldn't be doing, we kind of tend to walk out at rest. You know, David again, over in Solomon, I'm going to go back one. Samuel I was talking about, in Samuel, 2 Samuel, 23rd. I lost it there for a second. In the 23rd chapter, he says, the God of Israel said, the rock of Israel spake to me, he that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And he shall be as the light of the morning when the sun riseth, even a morning without clouds, as the tender grass springing out of the earth by clear shining after rain. Although my house be not so with God, yet he hath made with each one of us, an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and sure, for this is all my salvation and all my desire, although he make it not to grow. You know, all that our desire of God's people is that, you know, one day that we'll end up in heaven with him. And that we have a sure salvation. Because he died on the cross, he paid our sins, he hung there in our stead. So it's as if we were hanging there, but we weren't. But he had every single one of his children on his mind, and he thought of every single one while he was hanging on that cross. And we have that eternal salvation. But while we're here in this life, our house may not be so with God, but that doesn't do anything to our eternal salvation. It's sure. And that is all our desire. But we forget about it. You know, when Jesus came upon this earth, he went around preaching. And he was preaching for them to follow him. Take up their cross and follow him. I think that's in Matthew. I think it's like the 20. No, it's in the 11th. It's in the 11th verse or chapter. Yeah, 11th chapter. In the 28th verse, where he says, come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That, you know, this rest is what all of us are searching for while we're here. You know, we get a little comfort, we get a little a piece of rest while we're here in service to him, but more than likely as soon as we walk out that door, it starts fading away. That feeling of being in rest. But Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your soul. You know, that's what probably the best benefit of coming to church for us is that right there. You know, and Paul talked about it too. You know, over in Hebrews, in the fourth chapter. No, it's in the 3rd chapter. In the 7th verse. Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost saith, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation in the day of temptation in the wilderness, When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. Wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Now, who was he talking about? Was he talking about a person that was not born a child of God? No, he was talking about children of God that were not going to enter into his rest because they went about trying to make themselves look good, and they were, forgot the glory of God. They forgot the goodness of God in that getting all involved with the flesh and living toward the flesh instead of living toward God. And then he goes on further and says, take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. And he tells us what to do. He says, but exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. I kind of got studying on this word today because you find it in the Bible and it's spelled two different ways. It's spelled the way we spell it today, T-O-D-A-Y, and then it's also spelled as two words, a capital T, and then another word, D-A-Y. Today. And I tried to figure out what the difference was between that word. And I never could figure it out. I still don't know. Maybe the Lord will help me to figure that out. Going on, he says, for we are made partakers of Christ if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. While it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, they had ears to hear, so they heard, did provoke. Howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses, but with whom was he grieved 40 years. He was grieved with those that were over the age of 20 years and up. And those, he said, they were not going to enter into his rest, or they were not going to make it to Canaan. They all died in the desert, and their carcasses just lay about. They were children of God, doing those things that they knew better because they had already heard. They knew, but they just still decided they were going to live in the flesh. The flesh seemed to be a little more appealing to them. And I'm going to read the rest of that. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness, and to whom sware that he should not enter into his rest, but to them that believe not? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. They had heard it, they just didn't believe it. But they were children of God. And the world today says, you got to believe, you got to believe, you got to believe. That if you don't believe, then you're not going to become a child of God. Well, these people were already children of God. And they didn't believe. Just like the majority of the world today, and they didn't believe, what they didn't believe was the truth. They believed something, but they didn't believe the truth. Over in I'm going to go back to Psalms again. 95. in the 6th verse. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your heart. There it is again. Actually, it was first here. As in the day of provocation, as in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work. 40 years long I was grieved with this generation. and said, It is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways, unto whom I swear in my wrath, they should not enter into my rest. So there's a lot of his people that are not going to enter into his rest. There's very few that are going to enter into his rest. And I believe it's those people that actually have the truth and worship him with that truth and in the Spirit, is who that is. Paul continued on talking about, and here he kind of started changing the message here for just a minute. In the 4th chapter, let us therefore fear lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. Now, what faith are we talking about here? Are we talking about the faith of Jesus? I think the faith of Jesus would always be true. But I think here it was talking about the faith of those people that were living in the flesh. It was their faith. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, As I have sworn in my wrath, if thou shalt enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spake in a certain place of the 7th day on this wise. Now we're back to the 7th day again. And God did rest on the 7th day from all his works. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest. Seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter in therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. Again he limiteth a certain day, saying in David, Today, after so long a time, as it is said, Today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day. Today means today. Today is always today when we live. It's not tomorrow, and it wasn't yesterday. Every day that we live, it is today. Today is the day that we need to go in and enter into his rest. Every day we need to enter into his rest. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works. So when we enter into that rest, we cease from our fleshly works of trying to work our way into heaven. Because the example that we can go by is when God created the universe. He rested on the 7th day. Now when we enter into that rest, we can now stop and cease our works because we're in that rest and we can cease to it. Cease to the work. Let us labor, therefore. Here's a different kind of work. The work I was talking about was fleshly work. This is a spiritual work. Let us labor, therefore, to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the example of unbelief. And we can go back over here and where we need to take care of each other. Exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened. That's something we need to do with each other. You know, we need to take care of each other and love each other and to gently prod the ones that are going on in the wrong direction and get them back on the right path. For the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit, and of the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. You know, the word is able to tell where your thoughts are, tell everything that there is about you, and it can divide the difference between the spirit and the flesh. And it knows that those things of the flesh, that we're going to do those things. But it also sees the spirit within us. And that's the dividing asunder, the taking us apart. Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in his sight, but all things are naked and open unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do. You know, he sees everything. He knows all. Seeing then that we have a great high priest, Jesus Christ, that has passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. Let us hold fast to those things, to those truths that he has given unto us. That's what that profession means. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we might obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. We need to ask that we are able to remain in that rest that he gives unto us. You know, John saw a rest too. Over in Revelations, I haven't ever gone over here before. It's in chapter 14. And he saw some rest. Chapter 14, verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Now, I don't think that this is a rest, a heavenly rest. I think this is talking about a rest here on earth. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. I think those are the people that put away the things of the flesh, that kill that flesh and are able to live in the Lord and enter into that rest, because our works do follow them. I don't think we're going to have any works to do in heaven. I think any works that we're going to do to follow after him or labor in him is going to be here on earth, and not once we get up to heaven. For every high priest, I'm going back to Hebrews in the 5th chapter, beginning of the 5th chapter. For every high priest taken from among men is ordained for men in things pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sin. You know, according to the law, the priest had to once a year go into the most holy place and make an offering for the sins of the people for a whole year. And that was supposed to take care of everything there for them. I'm going to skip over to the 7th chapter of Hebrews. For it is evident that our Lord sprang out of Judea, of which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning priesthood. And it is yet far more evident, for that after the similitude of Melchizedek, there ariseth another priest, who is made not after the law of a carnal commandment, but after power of an endless life. You know, when Christ came and died on that cross, he entered into the holy place for us. That was a symbol. What the priests were doing every year was a symbol for what Christ was going to do for us when he came and died on the cross. Because when he died on that cross, he entered into that holy place, and he made one offering that lasted forever for us, that there was no need for any other sacrifices to be made at that point. And so he did away then there with the law of having to sacrifice unto God, because he was the ultimate sacrifice for us.
Backward just as same as it did forward.
That's right. That's right. But you know, and Christ had no infirmities or anything. Those priests that went in there first had to make an atonement for themselves before they could make an atonement for the people. But Christ had none. He didn't have to make an atonement for himself because he was God. He didn't have to make anything at all for him to live with his Father in heaven. He did that to save us and to have us with him in glory at the end of time. There was no need to do any daily stuff or offer any more sacrifices after that. Over in the 9th chapter, this Hebrews is full of stuff. But Christ, being come an high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands. What tabernacle was not made with hands? That was our bodies, our fleshly human bodies that we have, is that tabernacle. And it was a more perfect tabernacle because it was made by God. The tabernacle that man made was made by hands. You know, God talked about whenever man laid an instrument to a rock, that he then had spoiled that rock. It was no good after that because it had been touched by man's hands. Not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and of goats and the ashes of an heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. You know, when his Spirit comes into us, it purges our conscience from dead works. Because then we want to do good. We want to do those things that would be pleasing unto him. And if we do bad things, then we feel bad about it. Anything that we do bad. For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. That's why Christ had to die. But to bring a New Testament, he had to die to bring that about. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood. For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, This is the blood of the testament which God hath enjoined unto you. You know, he's had to sprinkle everything in that tabernacle and everything in there to purge anything, and it was even that it didn't even do any good. For Christ is not entered into the holy place made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself. You know, when he got finished with his works and he went back to live in heaven, he sat down on the right hand of God. And there he's sitting in the presence, and he's going to be there for us. Nor should he offer himself often like the high priest did. He just had to do it once into the holy place every year when they did that. For then must he often have suffered. He would have to have done it over and over again if he was going to do it the way they did it, since the foundation of the world. But now, once in the end of the world, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and to them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So he'll come back and he'll get us and he'll gather us up. I thank you for your time.